An obsolete destroyer. A dying alien scientist. One impossible rescue that changes everything. Lieutenant Doyen Park commands the Baekdu, a 40-year-old warship humanity has forgotten, patrolling the darkest edges of space where no one else dares to go. When a mysterious distress signal pierces the void, he finds her, Lara, a Velen scientist with amber eyes and secrets buried in ancient data cores. He saves her life. She steals his heart. But the raiders who destroyed her ship are hunting, and they've found them. 3 warships against 1 obsolete destroyer. The Baekdu is tearing apart. Hull breaches spreading like wounds, alarms screaming death. Doyen orders her to the escape pod. Lyra refuses. "I won't leave you," she whispers as the ship burns around them. Outgunned, outmatched. Seconds from annihilation. Then Doyen asks one desperate question. "Your technology, is it compatible with ours?" The maintenance bay of the aging destroyer Baekdu smelled like burnt metal and recycled air. Lieutenant Doyen Park wiped grease from his hands and stared at the flickering holographic display that showed their position in the outer reaches, far beyond any civilized space. The ship was 40 years old, part of Earth's so-called obsolete fleet, relegated to patrol routes that nobody else wanted. Most crews saw it as punishment duty. Doyen saw it as peaceful. "Contact," said Ensign Minho from the bridge. His voice crackled through the intercom. "Distress signal, bearing 270. "It's faint, sir." Doyen climbed the ladder to the bridge, his boots clanging against the metal rungs. The Baekdu was small, with a crew of just 12, and every sound echoed through her corridors. He took his position at the command chair and studied the readout. The signal was indeed weak, fluctuating in and out of existence like a dying heartbeat. "Analysis?" he asked. Minho's fingers danced across his console. "Unknown configuration. Not human. Not any of the known species in the database. The encryption is sophisticated, but the ship's AI managed to decode the basic meaning. It's a distress call." Doyen leaned forward. The outer reaches were dangerous, filled with debris fields from ancient wars and the occasional pirate gang looking for easy prey. Most species avoided this region entirely. Whatever was out there had either been incredibly unlucky or incredibly desperate. "Set intercept course," he said. Full burn. The Baekdu might have been obsolete by current standards, but her engines still worked. The ship lurched forward, accelerating toward the source of the signal. Doyen watched the scanner as a small vessel appeared on the screen, tumbling slowly through space. It was shaped like a teardrop, with elegant curves that spoke of a civilization that valued beauty as much as function. But beauty didn't matter much when half the ship was torn open to vacuum. "Life signs?" Doyen asked. "One," Minho replied, his voice tight. "Barely." They drew closer, and Doyen suited up, grabbing the emergency rescue kit from the airlock. The Baekdu matched velocity with the damaged vessel, and Doyen activated his magnetic boots, stepping out into the void. Stars surrounded him in every direction, cold and distant. He pushed off, his suit's thrusters carrying him across the gap between the ships. The tear in the alien vessel's hull was ragged, as if something had ripped through it with claws. Doyen climbed inside, his helmet light cutting through the darkness. The interior was filled with floating debris and frozen atmosphere crystals that sparkled in his beam. He followed his suit's life sign detector deeper into the ship, through corridors that were too narrow and ceilings that were too low. Designed for someone smaller than him, he found her in what looked like a control room, strapped into a seat that was cracked down the middle. She was small, barely reaching his chest if she stood, with pale lavender skin and dark hair that floated around her face in the zero gravity. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. The suit's scanner showed critical oxygen deprivation and hypothermia. Minutes, maybe, before it would be too late. Doyen cut through the restraints with his plasma torch, and gathered her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. He kicked off, heading back toward the Baekdu, holding her against his chest as his thrusters fired. When he reached the airlock, Minho was already there with the medical pod ready. They stripped away what remained of her environment suit and placed her inside the pod, which immediately began stabilizing her condition. "Will she survive?" Diane asked. Minho studied the readouts. "The pod is compensating for her physiology. It's designed to handle unknown species. Her vitals are improving. I think she'll make it." Diane nodded and returned to the bridge. He ordered the crew to retrieve what they could from the damaged vessel before it completely broke apart. They managed to salvage some data cores and personal effects, including a small crystalline device that hummed with a soft blue light. Then the Baekdu turned away, leaving the wreckage behind, and set course for the nearest station. 3 days passed. Diane found himself visiting the medical bay more often than necessary, standing beside the pod and watching the alien woman sleep. Her features were delicate, almost ethereal, with high cheekbones and a small pointed chin. When the pod finally opened and her eyes fluttered open, they were the color of amber, large and expressive. She looked at him without fear, which surprised him. "Hello," he said slowly, knowing she wouldn't understand. "You're safe now." She tried to sit up and winced, one hand going to her side where the medical scanner had detected internal injuries. Diane gently pressed her shoulder, encouraging her to lie back down. She studied his face, her amber eyes moving from his features to his uniform, and then to the medical bay around them. Her lips moved, forming words in a language that sounded like wind chimes and distant thunder. "Easy," Diane said. "Don't strain yourself." She reached up, her fingers hovering near his face but not quite touching, as if she was afraid he might disappear. Then she said something else in her language, and tears began sliding down her lavender cheeks. Diane had seen many reactions from rescued survivors over his career, but something about her tears struck him differently. He pulled up a chair and sat beside the medical pod, waiting. Over the next few hours, they established a basic system of communication. The ship's SCI could translate written language faster than spoken, so Diane brought a tablet that displayed simple images and words. She pointed at herself and made a sound that the tablet translated as Lyra. He pointed at himself and said, "Doan." She repeated it carefully, her accent making it sound softer. Almost musical dot, they learned that her people were called the Valen, from a world in a distant sector that Doyen had never heard of. She was a scientist, studying ancient ruins in the outer reaches when her ship was attacked by raiders. She had barely managed to send the distress signal before life support failed. When she learned that the Baekdu was considered obsolete, that human ships like it were being phased out in favor of newer models, she seemed genuinely confused. "This ship saved my life," she said through the translation device. "How can it be obsolete?" Doyen smiled. "Bureaucrats care about specifications and manufacturing dates. They don't care about the people who keep these old ships running." Lyra's recovery was rapid. Within a week, she was walking the corridors of the Baekdu, fascinated by every aspect of the ship. She asked endless questions about human technology, culture, and history. The crew found her presence charming, and Minho joked that she was better company than half the officers they'd served with. But it was Doyen who spent the most time with her, showing her the observation deck where she could watch the stars slide past, or the small galley where he taught her to appreciate coffee, which she declared both horrible and addictive. "Your people explore alone?" she asked one evening as they sat in the observation deck. The Baekdu was crossing through a nebula, and the windows were filled with swirling colors like an artist's palette. "Not alone," Doyen said, "but we spread out. Humanity likes to see what's beyond the next horizon, even in obsolete ships. Especially in obsolete ships. The new ones have all the glory roots." Ships like the Baidu get the quiet places, the edges of mapped space. I prefer it this way. Lyra tilted her head. A gesture he'd learned meant she was thinking deeply. I prefer it too. The ruins I was studying when I was attacked, they were built by a civilization that disappeared 10,000 years ago. No one knows why they vanished, but I think they were looking for something beyond their next horizon. And perhaps they found it. Or perhaps they found something that found them first, Doyen said. She looked at him with those amber eyes. You're not afraid of that possibility? Fear is useful. It keeps you alert, but it shouldn't stop you from living. Something passed between them in that moment, a connection that went deeper than translated words. Lyra reached out and took his hand, her fingers small and cool against his palm. They sat like that, watching the nebula colors shift and flow, neither of them feeling the need to fill the silence with more words. But peace never lasted long in the outer reaches. 2 days later, the Baekdu's alarm shrieked through the corridors. Diane ran to the bridge. Lyra closed behind him. Minho was already at his station, his face pale. 3 ships, he reported. Same configuration as the ones that attacked Lyra's vessel. They're hailing us. Let's hear it, Doyen said. The voice that came through was harsh and guttural, speaking in a language that the ship's AI struggled to translate. The meaning came through clear enough, though. The raiders wanted Lyra. They wanted the data cores salvaged from her ship. And they wanted the Baekdu to surrender immediately or be destroyed. Doyen looked at Lyra. Her face had gone white, her hands trembling. They found me, she whispered. The data cores contain information about the ruins. Information that could lead to ancient weapons. They've been hunting me for months. They won't get you, Doyen said. He turned to Minho. Battle stations. Charge all weapons. Minho stared at him. Sir, we're outgunned. Those ships are newer, faster. The Baekdu wasn't designed for combat against multiple hostiles. I didn't ask for an assessment. I gave an order. The crew moved with practiced efficiency. Obsolete or not, they were still human military. The Baekdu's weapons came online, her old railguns and missile tubes ready. The raider ships accelerated, spreading out in a classic attack formation. Diane watched them come, calculating angles and timing in his head. The Baekdu might be old, but she had advantages. Her armor was thicker than modern ships, built in an era when protection mattered more than speed. Her power plant was over-engineered, capable of sustaining more damage than the raiders would expect. Evasive pattern Delta, Doyen ordered. Target the lead ship's engines. The Baekdu dove, her thrusters firing in a pattern that sent her spiraling through space. The raiders' first volley missed, plasma bolts streaking past where the destroyer had been moments before. The Baekdu's railgun spoke, magnetic acceleration hurling depleted uranium slugs at a fraction of the speed of light. The first salvo caught the lead raider ship in the engine compartment, and it erupted in a ball of fire that lit up the void. 2 left, Minho said, his voice excited now. They're breaking formation. Diane smiled grimly. The raiders had expected an easy target, an obsolete human ship that would surrender without a fight. They hadn't expected competence. But 2 ships were still dangerous, and the Baekdu was taking hits. Hull breaches were reported on decks 3 and 5. The starboard missile tube was offline. They couldn't sustain this much longer. Lyra, Doyen said, I need you to do something for me. She looked at him, trust shining in those amber eyes despite the chaos around them. Anything. Take the data cores to the escape pod bay. If things go badly, I want you to launch. The pod has enough range to reach the nearest station. No, she said simply. I won't leave you. Lyra, I won't leave you, she repeated, her voice stronger now. You saved my life. You protected me. I will not abandon you to save myself. Another hit rocked the ship. Sparks flew from Minho's console, and he cursed, patting out a small fire with his bare hands. The Baekdu was dying around them, her old hull finally giving way. Doyen felt frustration and something else, something warm in his chest that he didn't have time to examine. "Fine," he said. "Then help me. Your people's technology, is it compatible with ours?" Lyra's eyes widened. "The crystalline device from my ship. It's a navigation aid, but it can interface with most systems." "Why?" "Because I have an idea." They worked frantically, Lyra's fingers flying over the alien device, while Doyen rerouted power through the Baekdu systems. The ship shuddered under repeated impacts, alarms blaring, crew members shouting reports. But slowly, the crystalline device began to glow brighter, its blue light spreading through the ship's systems like a living thing. The Baekdu sensors suddenly expanded, showing details about the raider ships that had been invisible before, highlighting weak points in their shields and armor. "There," Lyra said, pointing at the tactical display. "That's where their reactor shielding is weakest." Doyen didn't hesitate. He fired the remaining missiles, all of them, in a spread that converged on the weak points Lyra had identified. The raider ships tried to evade, but the Baekdu's enhanced sensors tracked them perfectly. The missiles struck home, and both ships vanished in twin explosions that briefly outshone the distant stars. Silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the sound of alarms and the hiss of fire suppression systems. Minho started laughing, a slightly hysterical sound. The rest of the crew joined in, relief washing over them. They had survived. The obsolete ship had won. Doyen turned to Lyra and found her staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Then she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, holding tight. He returned the embrace, feeling her small frame against his, feeling her heart beating fast through her thin clothing. Something settled in his chest, a certainty he hadn't expected. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest. "Thank you for not giving up." "Never," he said. "Not on my ship. Not on my crew. And not on you." She pulled back slightly, looking up at him. Her amber eyes were wet again, but she was smiling. "Your people have a saying, don't they? About obsolete things?" "Several sayings, probably. The device translated one for me earlier. They don't make them like they used to. I think I understand it now." Doyen smiled. "It's usually said about objects. Ships, tools, buildings. It applies to people too," Lyra said softly. "You could have abandoned me to save your ship. You could have surrendered. But you didn't. You fought with everything you had, in a ship the rest of your people have discarded. There's honor in that. Strength. I think humanity doesn't realize what it's giving up when it calls things obsolete." "Maybe," Doyen said. "Or maybe we're just stubborn." They stood like that for a long moment, surrounded by the controlled chaos of damage control and repairs. Then Lyra did something unexpected. She rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his, a brief, gentle kiss that sent warmth flooding through him. When she pulled back, she was blushing, her lavender skin darkening to purple. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I don't know if that's appropriate in human culture. Among my people, it's how we show gratitude and affection." But Doyen kissed her back, cutting off her nervous explanation. This kiss lasted longer, and when they finally separated, both of them were smiling. Minho coughed pointedly from his station, trying and failing to hide his grin. "We should probably focus on not dying from hull breaches," Minho said. "Just a thought," Doyen laughed. "Agreed. All hands, damage control priority Alpha. Let's keep this old ship together a little longer." The repairs took 3 days. The Baekdu limped toward the nearest station, her hull patched with temporary plates and half her systems running on backup power. But she was alive, and so was her crew. Lyra spent most of that time with Doyen, helping where she could and learning more about the ship. They talked about everything, from their respective worlds to their dreams and fears. Doyen learned that Lyra had left her home against her family's wishes, determined to study the ancient ruins and unlock their secrets. She learned that Doyen had requested assignment to the Obsolete fleet specifically because he loved these old ships, loved their character and quirks. When we reached the station, Lyra said one evening, I'll need to report what happened. My government will want to recover the data from the cores, and they'll want to investigate the raiders. And after that? Diane asked. She looked at him, and he saw uncertainty in her amber eyes for the first time. I don't know. I should return home, I suppose. Present my findings, but I find myself not wanting to leave. Is that foolish? We've known each other for less than 2 weeks. Diane took her hand. I don't think time is what matters. I've served with crew members for years and never felt what I feel when I'm with you. Maybe we're both foolish. Then we'll be foolish together, Lyra said. She squeezed his hand. Your ship will be in repair docks for months, won't it? All that damage? At least. Probably longer. The bureaucrats will want to decide if it's worth fixing at all. Then I have a proposal. Let me help. My people's technology could modernize the Baekdu without losing her character. And in exchange, when she's ready to fly again, I'd like to join your crew. I'm a scientist, yes, but I can learn. I can be useful. Doyen felt his heart lift. You want to stay? On an obsolete human ship in the outer reaches? I want to stay with you, Lyra corrected gently. The ship is just a convenient excuse. Although I have grown fond of her too. She has personality. She does at that. Diane pulled Lyra close, wrapping his arms around her. I'd like that. I'd like that very much. They stood together in the observation deck, watching the distant lights of the station grow brighter as the Baekdu approached. The ship groaned around them, her damaged systems protesting every movement, but she flew on. Obsolete, perhaps, by the standards of people who'd never had to trust their lives to her. But to Doyen and his crew, to Lyra who she'd saved from certain death, the Baekdu was perfect. Do you think they'll let you keep her? Lyra asked. I don't know, but I'll fight for her, just like I'd fight for you. Lyra smiled, that beautiful expression that had become precious to him. Humanity is strange. You build things, use them, and then discard them when something newer comes along. But you also have people like you, who see value where others see only age, who fight for what matters, even when everyone says it's not worth fighting for. Is that a compliment? It's love, Lyra said simply. I think I'm falling in love with you, Doyen. I know it's fast. I know it's probably unwise. But when I think about leaving, about never seeing you again, it hurts. So yes, it's love. Diane felt his throat tighten. He'd faced down raiders without fear, had walked into damaged ships not knowing if they'd explode around him. But this small alien woman's confession left him feeling vulnerable in a way combat never had. And yet, he knew his answer. Had known it, perhaps, from the moment he'd carried her unconscious body back to the Baekdu. I love you too, he said. I don't care how fast it is. I don't care what anyone else thinks. You're brilliant and brave and beautiful, and I want you to stay. Not just for a while, stay. They kissed again, longer this time, full of promise and possibility. When they finally separated, the station was close, its docking arms extending toward the battered destroyer. Soon there would be debriefings and reports, repairs and decisions. But for this moment, they had each other and the old ship that had brought them together. The Baekdu docked with a final shudder, and the crew began securing her systems. Doyen and Lyra walked to the airlock hand in hand. Whatever came next, they would face it together. An obsolete ship and an impossible love, somehow both exactly right. As they stepped onto the station, Diane looked back at the Baekdu one last time. Her hull was scarred, her paint was chipped, and half her running lights were dark. She looked like exactly what she was, an old warrior long past her prime. But she'd answered a distress call when no one else was close enough. She'd fought against superior numbers and won. She'd brought two people together across the vast emptiness of space. They really don't make them like they used to, Lear said, following his gaze. No, Doyen agreed. They don't. They walked into the station together, the obsolete ship and her crew, the rescued scientist and her rescuer. Behind them, the Baekdu waited in the dock, silent but not forgotten. And somewhere in the vast darkness of the outer reaches, other distress signals were calling out, waiting for someone to answer, waiting for ships that the rest of the galaxy had written off as obsolete. But Doyen knew the truth now, had learned it written in lavender skin and amber eyes. Obsolete just meant overlooked. And sometimes, the things everyone else had forgotten were the things that mattered most. His ship, his crew, his love, none of them were obsolete. They were simply waiting for someone who could see their worth.